thank you again to all of our sponsors for making this day possible. And also help me in recognizing I didn't leave off one person in attendance today, Dr. Kay Elmston. Thank you for joining us. And at this time, we'd like to recognize our presenting sponsor, Veritex Bank. So please join me in welcoming Jamie Miller.
Good morning. There's not a whole lot I can say. The video did a real good job of pretty much everything I would say. So Paul will tell you I'm not real good with staying on script. Just let me tell you briefly, Veritex Bank is a bank that started as a professional bank back in 2004, if you were interested. I got involved in 2005, took over as CEO. The first thing I did was put a bank down in Garland. And I think probably a lot of you in here will go, well, where's that? Well, we put it right at the front door of Baylor Hospital. And I'm proud to announce that we have now grown up. We'll be going to Main Street. Our bank will be moving to Main 10th and 11th. We bought the block. If you drive by it, you'll see 3 houses. One of the things that you do when you're a community bank is you do whatever you can to try to help the community. Those 3 houses were built in 1923. Seemed like it'd be a shame just to tear them down. They've been standing a long time. I've had several interested parties come to me to say, hey, can we have the houses? We've tried a couple of things that didn't really work, but it looks like now the Habitat for Humanity, working with the city and a lot of really good people, keep your fingers crossed. We have to do some structural studies, but it looks like those houses are going to be repurposed, moved to new homes within the downtown area. And hopefully they will become either housing for people that need it, or maybe veterans resource centers or something like that. So if you see Habitat people hanging around anywhere, give them a pat on the back. We're trying to get this project done. We're real excited about it. The good part for downtown Garland is I think we bring a new vitality to the downtown area. If you're sitting in this room and you don't go eat downtown Garland regularly, shame on you. I think it's some of the best food you can find. From Main Street Cafe to Main Street Deli. These are excellent people doing excellent things. I will tell you this, you heard from the video a little bit about me personally. I'm born and raised in Garland, which doesn't give me any advantage over anybody other than I can still kind of drive around the streets. I still remember enough to get from place to place. Recently I suffered a brief moment of insanity and got myself elected to the school board. Everybody asked me, how's that going? I'll just say this, there have been a couple of meetings where I have actually gotten home the same day that I started, but not many. There's a lot going on with the school district. Touch real quickly on Veritex Bank, we're a community bank. We recently accomplished the acquisition of Sovereign Bank, which was a large transaction for us. We're also in the process of an announced public it's public that we've announced the acquisition of Liberty Bank in Fort Worth. Soon the bank, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll get these transactions completed. And we'll be in that $3 billion range in terms of size, which is probably not a lot. I used to work at Citi and I used to work at Chase. When your assets start with a T as in trillion, it's not that impressive to have a bank that's $3 billion. That's still a small community bank. But we're real proud of where we've come from, seeing as how we started off at zero. Everybody in this room hopefully has been an entrepreneur long enough to have started something and built something. And if you're in this room and you've done that, then I give you all the credit in the world, because it is very hard to do. And the one thing you do is when you're done, you turn around and you look, and everything that's there is pretty much your fault because you did it. And it's it's with great pride that we tell you about what's going on with Veritex Bank. I'm not going to bore you too much with that. The one thing I will say too, in Garland, Texas, we have always had the highest performing banks of whatever system they're owned by. It has just been that way. The banks in Garland, Texas are very active, very community minded, and we're blessed by the fact that we have companies like y'all to call customers. I could go on and on about the opportunities I've had. The fact that I'm old, and I've been doing this for 40 years, means in 1981 I sat in the house of Austin Stanton, the founder of Vero, and heard him tell me about his night vision technology. People today, night vision is a pretty big thing. You see that it's prevalent all over the place. Faro was gobbled up by several different companies over the years, and it's no longer in Garland. But having the opportunity to sit down with somebody like Austin Stanton, who's probably a genius by all rights, but he was so entrepreneurial. If he thought of something, he did it. And that spirit is just one that we've been able to capture. If I was to summarize our bank and me personally, I would say the ability to figure out how to bank fiercely independent entrepreneurs is what I've been good at. And I will say this, there's nobody from Citibank in the room lately. I get so tired of apologizing to my customers that their square peg wouldn't fit in the round holes over at Citibank. And that's one of the reasons I went back to community banking. Very glad I did that. There's a purpose for every bank, and everybody does a good job. If they'll give me one more minute, I would like to say this. We introduced Dr. Crump earlier. Stand up. This is a school board commercial. Okay, if you're in this room and you don't know this lady, she's one of the superstars. And Mr. El Sasser, Dr. El Sasser right beside her. Is it Doctor? Dr. Mister, all right? These two people run the CTC, the Career Technology Center in Garland, Texas, just opened up for our students this year. I've been through it twice, and I don't care whether we're talking about night vision equipment, technology, whatever it is, these people are teaching it in a building over here in Garland, Texas, right by Naaman Forest High School. It's the most impressive building, I think, in the Metroplex. They do everything. If you want to learn how to cook, if you want to learn how to be a paramedic, whatever you do, the thing that I'll say that struck me when I was there this past week was the kids, it's kind of like an open campus, like I hope you don't mind that I'm bragging on you. It's like college. It's like this. But there's nobody running around the hallways. They're all in the class, totally engaged with all this new stuff that they get to work with and all the opportunity that this represents. If you're in this room and you're interested in that, I know Dr. Crump would love to give you a tour. It's one of the shining things that the GISD has done recently. Our communities of Saxe, Rowlett, and Garland are going to benefit greatly. I'll just say real quickly, and I'm done. Thank you for being here. Manufacturing is the lifeblood of this city. It has been so forever. There's so many names and so many people that have been a part of that. It's hard to mention them all. I can just tell you that we're real proud to be here, and thank you for being here this morning.
All right, let's give one more round of applause for Veritex Bank and all of our sponsors today. Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mike Mason. After accurately forecasting the water management trend in the early 90s, Mike built a network of irrigation distributors and acquired tech companies to create the world's leading sustainable, high-tech, socially conscious water management brand. He has been at the forefront of new industries since the early 80s when he orchestrated the initial capitalization for one of the first wireless cable companies. Mike serves on the boards of Freedom Alliance and the Grant Thompson Advisory Board and is deeply involved in many charities. Please join me in welcoming Mike Mason.
The only thing I regret is that I did not get a lesson on the clicker before I came up, so we may have to just have a little, make sure we're doing this right. There we go. So if you could point it at the right direction, Ariel, which way do we point it to make sure it works? All right. First of all, I want to thank you for letting me be here this morning. I'm not very good at standing behind the podium. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So I want to say thanks, first of all, to Ariel and Paul for getting me to do this. It has been a wonderful experience to look back. They asked me to talk about our transition as a company, and as the title of the speech says, transforming a manufacturing company into a technology powerhouse. I think it would probably be better to say it more like this. We transformed a absolutely almost asleep company into a powerhouse, and I would like to share a little bit about that with you. Weathermatic itself is a company that is 72 years old. Many of you in the community know us as Telsco Industries, but the DBA is Weathermatic. As I look at my trail of getting to this company, I often wonder what happened. How did I go from a technology-oriented background to an industry that literally didn't know anything about technology? My background, I started out in college as an entrepreneur, started 3 different companies when I was in college. And you know what the definition of an entrepreneur is in college? Does anybody know this? It's called a janitor. That's what I did. I started janitorial companies, apartment locator companies, but I realized I had a knack for business. I left Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and came out to the Big D. Went to work for Republic Bank Dallas, the big green building downtown, and one of my customers was Mort Meyerson, who the namesake of the Meyerson Symphony Center. And after he sold EDS with Ross Perot, I'll never forget, I was advising him on how to manage some of his money, and I said, Mr. Meyerson, can I ask you a question? I said, I probably have $3,000 in my bank account. Why in the world are you asking me for advice? He said, you're just entertaining. I said, well, thank you so much for that, Meyerson. I really do. And so that was kind of one of my lessons learned there at a very early age, to work with some amazing people in business. But I broke off from the bank and I started my own investment banking firm and realized that I really, really love technology. I was early on with Blockbuster Video, not on the corporate staff, but in their fundraising group. And helped raise the money for a number of the locations, and was able to sit on a lot of the strategic planning, which taught me so much. I jumped from there and actually was very fortunate, started the first division of Cox Cable that was bought out, Metrolink of Dallas, put together the transaction that started their basically telecommunication enterprise, the first cable company to go into the phone business. That was amazing. It was a great experience. And I was doing all this at the age of 27, 28 years old, and just really enjoying a very quick rise of excitement. But then a really unique thing happened. I had a gentleman walk in my office and told me he wanted to try to make a cable television deal happen. And luckily, I was able to convince Lamar Hunt, God bless his soul, to back me and a group in taking Heartland Wireless Cable to a publicly traded company, and in less than 2 years we were able to turn a $3 million investment to over $200 million on a public offering. Now, that all sounds pretty exciting, doesn't it? So how does it go from there to going to Weathermatic Telsco Industries, a company at the time that was doing $5 million in revenue and losing $1 million a year? And I'm going to tell you right now, if I had known it was going to be as hard as it was, I wouldn't have done it. But when I walked in the door the first day, and this is the God honest truth, I literally walked in the door and I almost felt overwhelmed with a sense of purpose. I had a vision. I literally did. I know it sounds crazy to some people, but I really did. I'd grown up going to mission trips and seeing how water was in such crisis in so many communities around the world. And as I walked in the door, I literally sat there and I just felt a sense of awe, a sense of opportunity. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I walked in and I met the previous owner and talked to him for a little bit, and we began a path of turning this company around. Now, you can see some of the logos. So again, 72-year-old business. You can see the first logo up the top. Now today, Weathermatic, the water conserving solutions. But I want to share with you, more importantly, what were some of the core values that made the company unique, because at one time, Weathermatic, before I got there, was the #1 company in the industry. They made the highest quality products. They had the best people, and they were exciting. But the founder died, and it began to decline pretty rapidly after they lost the vision. But he had created a culture that said, our quality is integrity. So think of that. In 1945, he had a mission statement, a vision statement, before mission statements and vision statements had ever been discussed. Our quality is integrity. As I think back about that core culture, that was one of the key reasons that we were able to wake it back up and put life into it and do something very special. Now, I could give you a 4 or 5 hour speech on people, process, and capital, but I really want to focus on the one thing that makes the biggest difference in any transition of a company. And it's the ability to embrace the grind. How many people in this room can relate to that statement? Embrace the grind. Man, I tell you what, I think back and I go, okay, well, I can show you all of our products that we make. We make the world's leading smart technology. We have valves, rotors, spray heads. And when I first came to the company, I got to tell you, we were making almost everything that we assembled. It was amazing. I started when we were celebrating our 50th anniversary. I was 29 years old. I thought I knew everything and quickly realized how little I knew. We were number 17 out of 21 different manufacturers in the industry and probably quickly on our way out the door. We'd been told that we couldn't have a bank line of credit, and to pick on the bankers in the room now, every one of them are knocking on our door every day. So it's a fun transition from the days of me pleading and begging to now the roles have reversed a little bit, but that's okay. Anyway, so that transition of 50 years, there's a few things I want to try to, let me see if I can get here. I think about all the challenges that we had to overcome in the manufacturing sector over the past, say, 20 years. How many people can relate to the challenges of, think about what we've heard. The maquiladoras, hey, we got to move everything to Mexico. No, we got to move everything to China. No, we got to move it all back home. The capital crisis, the healthcare crisis. How many people can even think about the crisis of when the presidential election drug out and the economy seemed to stop for 6 months? When you're in manufacturing, you have got to be tough. You've got to be nimble. You've got to be bright. And I'm going to tell you, our story is we had to transition from the traditional role of manufacturing to really a new role that was as a service. Okay, so I'm going to jump over here. So how does a manufacturing company survive and thrive in this type of market? Well, you've got to have a narrow focus. One of the first things that I realized is I said, you have to narrow your focus and dominate your market. You see, we were trying to be all things to all people. Now, I understand we've got a lot of people in the room that are manufacturing, a lot of bankers and things of that nature, but this applies in almost any area that you work in. You've got to narrow your focus and dominate your market. You got to find out what you're really good at. We had a vision when I first came to the company that I knew that water was going to do some very special things, that the price of water was going to change rapidly. But candidly, we were trying to be basically the irrigation manufacturer and copy a lot of our largest competitors. And that just was not going to work. I had so many people telling me to do different things. Well, Mike, you've got to be operationally superior to everybody. You've got to be customer intimate. They were giving me all these cute cliches, but in the end, we had to define what it was that made us very, very special. Now, this is the slide I've been wanting to get to. When I first got to the company, and I promise this is true, we literally had gotten to the point that as our sales were shrinking before I got there, we were making the screws to use to assemble components. Even though you could go down to the store and buy screws for 50 cents, because somebody wanted to make the screw, we were focused on making screws. The reason I use that analogy is when you define what it is that you're good at, make sure that you don't do the things that everybody else is good at. We had to narrow our focus and get on that water technology vision that I had. And as soon as I got to the company, we began to refine and refine and refine of what it is that made us great. And this is the exciting thing that happened. Just like when I was trying to pitch Cox Cable on the idea that fiber optics was going to change the world, or I can remember going out and telling people that Blockbuster Video was going to become an entertainment powerhouse, or that Dish Television was going to be bigger than regular cable television back then. All of those transitional statements were true and transformative. But if you're in the room and you're trying to figure out how to transform your company, you've got to ask yourself, what trend is it that you're going to latch on to? What trend are you going to capitalize on? Ours was the rising cost of water and the declining cost of technology. Because I had a background in seeing, when I did the cable television company, the reason why the cable TV company went crazy was because we had a converter box. Everybody has cable television. You've got your converter box on your below your TV. Do you remember the days when you had to pay $700 for a converter box to get cable television, and that might get you 36 channels? Well, I found a way to take the converter box down from $700 to about $300, and then instead of selling it to the customers, we rented it. $5 a month. The sales started going up 1,000% overnight. That's the perfect example of what I'm trying to communicate today about transforming your business. You've got to find that niche. You've got to find that vision that makes you so special. And then you've got to package and partner with people to help you deliver that in a way that's transformative to the market. And this little curve right here was the most important curve of all. You can see water began to escalate and continues to escalate faster than any other utility. For HOAs, it's the number 3 expense. For many of our school districts, in fact, thank you, Garland, for being one of our top school districts. I'm going to brag on them just real quick. The Garland Independent School District saved 125 million gallons of water a year. It redistributes about $600,000 of expense back into the school district because they had the vision to do it early. And I'm so proud of you guys. Thank you for doing that. You're a great customer. Many school districts and cities across the country use the technology. In fact, I think we've done probably close to 200 or 300 in the past year. All I've got to do now is figure out how to meet the person at the city of Garland to get them to work with us, but that's another day. Anyway, the point is, we started taking the technology and the rising cost of water, latching onto that, and then guys, hear me when I say this. If you're in the manufacturing business, you have access to data that nobody else does. I was so frustrated that I was selling our product and I could not get people to embrace it to the degree that it should be embraced. We're saving 125 million gallons for one school district, but another would just sit there and look at us and say, we just can't do that. And it was getting me so angry, and I said, why aren't you doing it? Well, I had to find out why they weren't doing it. It wasn't because they didn't believe in the technology, it was because they either didn't have the capital or the budget. And I had to listen and mine the data and then capitalize and monetize the data. When you do those kind of things, my friends, that's when it becomes magical. That's where a company that goes from $5 million and losing $1 million becomes a $50 million enterprise with 74% margins. I remember the day when we were literally fighting to survive and we were at 22 or 23% margin, and I'm wondering, how in God's name am I going to pay the payroll? And now to transform that to a truly amazing operation. I'd love for y'all to come by, anybody who'd like to come by sometime and see us. We're so grateful. I want you to look at this screen up here. I want you to picture the difference between someone who's trying to sell you a box of spray heads, a box of valves, to now I have an integrated network that we connect irrigation systems all over the world in 85 countries. We gather the data that tells us we know how many spray heads are going to break, how many line breaks are there going to be. At the University of Texas, they average 1 water line break per month per irrigation controller. And if I ask them, I say, guys, how many of those are you repairing? Before, they were repairing virtually none, and now they're repairing them all. And their water consumption dropped by 70%. 70% water consumption drop doesn't just mean they saved water. It doesn't just mean they saved money. It means now that their landscape is flourishing and their campus looks better. It also tells you that you're not going to have slip and falls. You're not going to have all the maintenance associated with water being stomped and tracked into all their facilities. These kind of data analytics, this type of networking, this is what makes it exciting. So that's what got us to the point of having the largest connected network in urban real estate. So we know how much water is going to be used, but now we've been able to expand that into a software protocol that allows us to help them verify, are their labors really where they're supposed to be? An asset tracking tool that shows them exactly where every valve, every head, every street light, every controller, everything is mapped and oriented to where they know exactly where it is. Everything's time stamped so they know when did the guy get there, when did the guy leave. Now compare that back to the guy who had a box of spray heads that he was trying to sell. Can anybody relate to me? Something happened to my screen up here, but let's see if maybe it's a build. Do you think it's a build? Yeah, it's a build. Let's go ahead and flip them all up there. Oh. So what happened? As we're building that network, the most prestigious brands and companies in the world wanted to do business with us. We transformed from literally being on our knees, pleading with people to buy something, to now they're standing in line. That technology, that evolution, that data, all of that pulled together is what makes it special. And now we have the brands to prove it. Just this past month, Brody Bruner here, our Executive Vice President on the front row, he just closed the transaction where JP Morgan Chase partnered with GE, is now retrofitting all of the Chase banks across the nation. It'll take them probably 2 years to get it done, but it's one of the largest transactions in our industry history. Associa, the largest homeowners association manager in the world with over 33,000 HOAs, is now exclusively partnered with us. So what are the keys to success as I close this up? We can go back and have a 2 or 3 hour conversation about vision, people, and by the way, let me say something real quick about people. One of the foolish mistakes that I made as a kid when I was very young is I thought I could do it largely on my own. And I realized after I struggled repeatedly that that was not possible. Your success is directly related to the people that you hire and the people that you embrace. If you're struggling in your business right now today, it's because the people that you have. You got to make sure that the biggest problem isn't yourself, but if it is, then get someone who's better than you to help you run it. I promise you that's the fact. But people, process, capital, you got to have the capital. But most importantly, you got to have that grit, that grind to embrace the grind and to stick relentlessly, refusing to fail. Many of those companies that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, that I said that when we were number 17 out of 21, many of those people that were like number 4, 5, 6, and 7 that all closed their doors, they had more capital. They had more connections. They had more of everything except for one thing, and that was the grit and the grind. They just couldn't embrace the grind and the competitive impact of what was coming. The last thing that I want to share with you is, as you have the vision and you have the people, you have the process and the capital to execute, you now have to be able to find a way to connect to the hearts of the people that you serve. You got to find a way to find something that touches yourself and also touches your employees and touches your customers. I'm so honored, so very honored to say that Weathermatic did just that. Several years ago, after the death of one of our best friends who had been the first person that I hired, died suddenly in the middle of the night from a heart attack at the age of 42, we found ourselves like, what's the right word? I felt like somebody had shot a cannonball through my chest and I couldn't make it right. We had to do something to express our sense of appreciation and benevolence. It was really when I understood that people were everything. So we started basically a foundation to save water, give life. For every gallon of water that we save through our programs, our maintenance programs, we donate it to a third world country in the form of a fresh water well that we dig. So yes, you can see pictures of me and Brody and Daryl and all of us going out to Nicaragua and Guatemala and El Salvador and Haiti and various places, up to our ears in mud, digging water wells for the needy. And we have that pledge of gallon for gallon. Well, I'm happy to say that we are now on well number 36. Our goal is to get to 500. And at 500, we will have saved 1 million lives. Pretty audacious goal, isn't it? Lord knows we're going to try to get there. We certainly are going to try to get there. But look at the faces of the people in that picture. Does that look like a company that is struggling to survive? Or does it look like that's somebody that's got a vision, a purpose, a passion, a commitment? We're willing to endure whatever it takes to be successful. Whatever's going to happen, you can bring it on, because we're going to face it head up, right in the eyes. We're going to look it square in the eyes, and we're going to get it done. I want to encourage you today. I know some of you in the room are probably dealing with some pretty tough things because it's a tough market. But you can do it. You can flat do it. You got to find some way to just get the moxie and the strength to stand up and get after it. Don't shrink back. Don't be afraid. Don't focus on the things that are the problems. Just get one thing done today, and tomorrow there'll be another, and you'll get there. It may take you 20-something years like it did me, but you'll get there. Anyway, thank you again for having me this morning. I hope there was something that you gained from this. I don't know if I'm supposed to take questions or not, but Paul, am I supposed to take questions, or am I supposed to just end it now?
Mike, you got the microphone. In my experience, that's power. So you can do whatever you want. Is there a question? Is there a comment? Back in the back.
Can you elaborate on, you mentioned about talking to people a lot in your presentation and the people above everything. Can you talk about how you go, and I know this is a large question, but just about the culture and developing culture. And it is like, how do you go about developing the culture in a company like Weathermatic?
Okay, so he's asking, how do you develop a culture in a company like Weathermatic? Well, first of all, you do everything wrong. And then as you do everything wrong, you figure out what you did right, and you do more of the right stuff than the wrong stuff. But you can hire, consultants, but I would first tell you, you better do a lot of reading, and you got to get your vision right first. You got to have the vision of what you're going to try to accomplish right. For us, we're finding that because even just 2 years ago, we were still too scattered trying to do way too much. And the broader our statement, the worse we were, the narrower we are, the better we are. Just make sure that what you're narrow on, that the market long term can allow you to grow at least 20% a year for at least 5 to 10 years. Step number one, culture. First and number one is hire the kind of people you want to be with. If you've got someone that is a naysayer, if you've got someone that is difficult, that can't be collaborative, you're going to have to transition them, because you cannot afford to be that nurturing person to someone who's pulling people down. So step number one is get the right people, be relentless about them, and don't go hire people that don't have a strategic purpose that ties to your plan. One of the greatest mistakes that I made was I kept trying to put square people in round holes, like, well, I have this person and here's our strategy, so I'll have this person do that strategy. That's not the way it works. You've got to hire people that can execute the strategy that you have in place. And as you hire those people, make sure that they have a heart and a spirit for service, because as they serve your customers, you will be able to serve them and help them have a prosperous career. I hope that answers it. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. So first of all, you got to remember what the purpose of the cause is. The cause is not to let the community know what you're doing. The purpose of the cause is to reveal first to your employees your culture. You with me? Secondly, as your employees see the nature of your culture, then your customers see it. Not just your employees, but then your customers see it. And really, that's who you're serving, is your customers and your employees. As you do that, try to get a social cause that your customers and your employees can embrace with you. And candidly, that's all you need to do. Don't worry about the public. Don't worry about what they think. Your personal employees and your customers, and that's it. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? They're probably ready for me to stop, I bet, but yes. At our company, how do onboarding new hires? I would be a liar if I didn't tell you that we're struggling in that area right now. We need to get better at that. But one of the number one things that we do is we've created a series of PowerPoint presentations and recordings. But generally, the process that we do is we require them to spend at least 2 to 3 hours with me, either at breakfast or in a meeting, and I pound it in their head, pound it in their head, pound it in their head. And then we try to take a selected group on the mission trips with us. So as we're going to do the well programs, we take employees, we take customers, and we go build water wells together. And I'm telling you right now, and then we build the videos about the water well trips, and we show them continuously to our people. That's probably the biggest change that we've made in the past year, is that we've switched from a verbal communication to more of a videography. They're telling me to get off now. So am I doing okay? Perfect. Okay. So videography now, just communicate the message, but get the customers to go. By the way, I could do this all day long. Could y'all just cancel those sessions back there and let's, okay, anything else before we go? If not, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I hope it's been effective. Thank you.
So what I really like the most about manufacturing is that they have an array of subject matter. So that way you had your own section that you could pull from when it comes to developing talent, relationships, as well as challenging yourself to move your business to the next phase.
I thought this was a great event for a chance to meet partners in the community and for us to share the work that we do as we look for additional work that we're trying to grow into.
It was very interesting, met a lot of people. The classes were good. The education part of it, this was about with the supervisors talking to their floor people, which we need to get more involved in as safety and supervisors. Get more in act and get the supervisors to do more than just supervise.
The breakout sessions are beneficial to me because in the past, I've gone to many different seminars and that types of things. And each seminar, I always come away from each seminar with a new kernel of knowledge about a different thing and a different way to implement stuff. And today was no exception.